I think this is an iris flower. I'm not exactly sure, but whatever it is, it's a cool color. And that's why I like this picture so much. This is actually the result of several iterations of this photo, and I had to take a lot of things into account. So what you see here right in the center, which is a classic composition that I really like. This is like tailor-made for a 50mm lens, is like one single subject in the center with an interesting background. So compositionally wise, this photo isn't going to win any awards, but I really like it because of the colors and the way it all comes together. So in the center is this flower, and I had taken earlier versions of this photo that were not quite so interesting. You could see this flower, but there was a lot of other stuff going on in the background and then other flowers, and it just didn't look that interesting. So I kept on getting closer and closer and closer, and I used I think this was my +4 close-up filter. I don't think I used a +10. I think a +10 would have been too close on this, but I used a +4 close-up filter to get this photo, and I just wanted to close the distance between me and the flower. And that worked great. And I forget the aperture. I think this might have been 2.8. You got to be careful when shooting up close because your depth of field is so shallow that your subject ends up losing sharpness. And in this case, if you look closely, the very top of the flower is actually out of focus. It's the front that's in focus. And you just got to be careful when shooting up close. Anyway, I kept on getting closer and closer to this flower. But what I started to pay attention to was the background, not just getting a sharp picture of my subject, but what else is in the frame. And it's really tricky to do this on a DSLR because you can't exactly see what the final composition is like unless you use live view. I think a mirrorless would have been much better suited for this picture because I could have seen all of the picture, whereas on a DSLR, you don't get that sense of blurry background. You see everything that you see here, but it's not blurred out the way it is in the final composition unless you use live view. So I think that's what I did on this. I think I used live view. The wind wasn't blowing too much, and which is also tricky on a DSLR and a D750 because live view just isn't that great at autofocus. And if your subject is moving, you can kind of forget about it. But in this case, my subject was pretty still and I was able to compose the shot just fine. But I just wanted this flower to be isolated among all the other elements, but I didn't want to remove all those other elements. So I have this green in the background, which is I think a bush or a shrub. You got the white and blue in the top on the right-hand side. On the left-hand side, there's that deep brown, which might be another tree or maybe like a sculpture of some kind. Then those other purple spots. All of that was intentional, and this was the result of a lot of tweaking and trial and error over the course of maybe 3 minutes, and where I just kept on taking more and more shots or like progressively successive shots because one would be like kind of good, and then I'd move around a little bit and then get a little better one, move around a little bit, get a little better one. And here we have it, the final result. It's very simple, it's very classic, but it's got well-defined colors and easy to identify subject. It's not complicated, but it's just a nice, pleasing picture to look at.